speech I'm focusing on a specific chapter of the white paper, actually. That is the chapter on how to voice immigrants' needs and claims within small and medium-sized towns, and particularly on the role of bridging figures. Their starting point is what also Catherine said before. So there are many direct and indirect barriers to the political and civil participation of people from a migrant background that are not specific of small and medium-sized towns. For instance, you need to have time, you need to have the correct information, and you need to have information on how and where you can participate to be an active person within a locality. And this is usually not very easy for people from a migration background, especially newcomers, small and medium-sized towns. But as Gino De Hulo said in the first part, small and medium-sized towns can really take advantage of the small size of the towns, because it can mean, it's not something obvious, but it can mean that it's easier to create strong bonds among people. And in this sense, we found that a really crucial role in small and medium-sized towns is that of bridging figures. That in our cases are people often, but not exclusively, from a migration background, who can connect on one side minority groups, immigrant groups, and on the other side local policymakers and decision makers. We found three main types of bridging figures. These are ideal types, let's say, but it's useful because you can see strengths of weaknesses of each. So civic bridging figures are people from civil society associations, immigrant self-organizations, and also religious communities that are very important, as Stan said in the first speech. And these have some strengths. So they are highly legitimized from the group they represent. And that's the big strength of this type. But on the other side, they really need the acknowledgement of local policymaker to work, because otherwise it's an asymmetric relations. And also there's an issue of fragility as regards the sustainability, because they usually rely on a single person, and so they rely on the willingness, on the availability of time of that person. And so this could be an element that can hinder their possibility to be sustainable in time as bridging figures. Then we have semi-institutional bridging figures. These are people within the administration, within the municipality, with not an explicit bridging role, but, for instance, as in the case of Fermignano, there's an elected councillor from a migration background who indirectly became representatives of people from a migration background at the local level. This is useful because, these people are legitimized from both sides, let's say, but there are still some fragilities. They rely, again, on single persons, and it's not obvious that they include all people from a migration background in their network. So especially hard-to-reach group can be very hard to reach for these, let's say, official figures. There's also another advantage that is a very pragmatic one. So in highly polarized context, these people can absolve a bridging role without being too much visible. This is problematic from one side, but from a very pragmatic side, if immigration is a very polarized issue, this could be a way to solve at least some of the barriers that exist. And finally, there is institutional bridging figures that are offices or people hired or built by the municipalities with an explicit bridging role. So this is their task. There's high sustainability here. There's high legitimation on the side of public authorities, yet the weakness is that they need to be acknowledged by the people they are meant to represent. And we observe all this kind in the 4 case studies that we have in our partner municipalities, let's say. It's interesting also to see the difference between, on one hand, Weber and Fermignano, that are destination of migrants from a long period of time. And so you see how here there are a lot of different figures. So you start with key bridging figures in the municipality. In both cases, in the case of Weber, it is within the administration. In the case of Fermignano, it is within the council. And yet you see that these figures are very useful, are very active in proposing new stuff, but they cannot reach everyone, especially they cannot reach newcomers. These are especially representatives of established groups. And so here is also where PISTE somewhat intervenes, because in BEBRA there were already existing an integration committee that is a body of appointed persons by the municipalities that who are not necessarily from a migration background, but they are stakeholders in immigration-related issues, also people from a migration background. And this integration committee acquired more and more importance also during the course of the project, and also thanks to the many participatory activities that were organized in BEBRA. So you will see the experiment later. The Future Search event was a very bottom-up and participatory event that also involved the creation of a steering committee in which other stakeholders in immigration-related issues were gathered. And so in this way we see a switch from a situation of semi-informality to a institutionalization, still also maintaining element of informality that allows the accessibility of a lot of groups from different people. And it's similar in Fermignano too. We see how during the experiment the immigration office that was meant to absolve bureaucratic issues also become a bridging institutions connecting people from immigration background with the municipality. And the same happened with a bottom-up fashion within the local national policy platforms that were a body created by the PISTE project that involved civil society associations at the local level dealing with immigration-related issues. And this body starts as a bridging bodies mainly made of informally gathered people, and became an institutionalized and recognized local observatory on immigrant policies. This is a good example because you see how you start from a body that have a high legitimation on the ground but not on the side of institutions. You take it, you made it institutional, and then you have solved, let's say, the legitimation issue of bridging figures. It's also interesting to see how this developed in the case of new immigration destinations, as in the case of Ninove and Boio, that are very different contexts, as you saw. Nicoletta already explained very well how social workers, thanks to their trust relationship with received people, could work as bridging figures. And this is very, very important because unaccompanied minors have a very precarious life paths, and also they remain in the locality for a short period of time, and so they represent somewhat a fixed point in their path. On the other hand, Ninove is a very good example of how institutional bridging figures can work when you have access to trained personnel. So outreach social workers, but also other kind of trained staff within the municipalities really act as bridging figures, especially with newcomers. Yeah, of course. But these are also the kind of target that is harder to reach, and that usually need more support. So it's a good example of how a direct investment of the municipality, that is a very brave act, if you want, because you are doing this in a very polarized context, how this can really work to bridge people from migration background with the municipality. To sum up, we have three main challenges that emerge when you are relying on bridging figures in small and medium-sized towns. There's the sustainability in time that is more pronounced in the case of non-formal bridging figures. You have the issue of legitimacy that is on both sides, on the side of people you are meant to represent and on the side of local policymakers. And then you have the possibility exclusionary nature of bridging figures, because if people are not included in their network, they are excluded from being voiced by these figures. And so what to do? This is the answer, the questions we try to tackle in the white paper. And we produce some recommendations that are tailored on small and medium-sized towns, but still not all and medium-sized towns have the same context. We really should avoid this stereotype, let's say. So what you can do is ensure recognition of these figures. We saw how transforming informal figures in institutional figures can work to have a really highly legitimized and sustainable bridging tool between the immigrant population and the local government. And when bridging figures are not emerging, it's really an effective way to proceed to create new institutional bridging figures. Also to create the context for bridging figures to emerge, as we saw in the case of local participatory forums. These are very good arena from which new bridging figures can emerge. And then, as we saw, bridging figures cannot be the only tool adopted, of course. So you need to adopt a systematic approach. You need to make participation path accessible as accessible as possible for people from a migration background. And these are some suggestions, for instance, including people from a migration background in electoral lists, in eligible positions, as in the case of Fermignano, or within the administration, as is the case of Debra and Ninove. This really work because you include the views of people from a migration background directly within the administration. And finally, participatory forums. These are, of course, the focus of the project, and they are very important to us. There's, well, researchers insist on saying that some of these tools are no more suitable, they are overcome, and so on. But yet, most of these studies focus on big cities, and we see how these tools can really work thanks to the specific strengths of small and medium-sized towns. We include all these suggestions more in detail within the white paper, also specifying in what context they can work. I'm just taking as example, for instance, the case of elected immigrant advisory boards. So this can really work in a context where there is no asymmetry of powers between groups, because it's a way in which people from a migration background who are not citizens can participate as if they are citizens. But yet, there's a crucial issue in this, at least two crucial issues to consider. These bodies need to have actual power. And you see, for instance, in the case of a different but similar bodies, that is the Integration Committee, that body has an actual power because it produces, it contributes to produces a mission statement that is a guide for local policymaking on immigration issues in Bebra. So there need to be actual recognition and power, and also, as also Catherine hints before, people from immigration background do not necessarily are interested only in immigration-related issues. There are a lot of people from everyday life of everyone, and so it is important that these bodies really focus on a various set of issues. So this is the views of people who are not allowed to vote in our municipalities, but whose visions, whose voices need to be represented anyway in the municipalities. And yet you can find more information about this on the white paper, and thanks.